gentlemen, hey, congratulations on your new documentary film, Vigilant Inc.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so the timing of this documentary is, I want to say, impeccable. You know, election year, a lot of interest in it, but we have to hear it from you guys. Is what sparked you folks, to do this documentary in the first place?
Well, I have been covering what we politely call vote suppression. That is basically shafting Black people and Asian Americans and American natives, Hispanics, shafting them out of their vote through real trickery. And it's not small. It's not minor. And I've been doing this for 25 years for The Guardian, BBC, Rolling Stone. And so now I was trying to get this information into the U.S. public discussion. And so working with Martin Sheen and George DiCaprio, that's Leo's dad, and the great Maria Florio, who's already won an Oscar for Best Documentary. These are great guides to work with, and of course, and the wonderful narrator, Rosario Dawson. We want to tell the story that we can't tell on U.S. television, because as you see, we do a lot of undercover work. And that's just not done anymore on U.S. TV. I did it for the BBC, but I can't do it for U.S. TV. So we're putting it in a film, and then doing short pieces for social media, because I don't think we're making a movie. We're part of a movement. It's not just a movie. We are working closely with Black Voters Matter Fund, Latasha Brown. We're working with the NAACP, ACLU, many other groups around the country. Rainbow Push. I just met with Reverend Jesse Jackson, who had a command performance of Vigilantes Inc. And what we are doing is the groups are using this as a warning, so that people will know how to protect their vote and be aware that they could be under attack by what are called vigilante voter challenges. This is a brand new thing this year. Brand new. It was first taken for a test drive 4 years ago in Georgia in the 2020 election, where again, these are not government officials. These are individuals, self-appointed vote fraud hunters. And these vote fraud hunters start challenging other voters. It goes back to the Ku Klux Klan of 1946, which incorporated itself as Vigilantes Inc. for the sole purpose of knocking off Black voters from the voter rolls. Well, this Vigilante Klan plan has come back this year with a vengeance. In 2020, and it's all GOP officials. I'm not being partisan about this. It's GOP officials working with a group called True the Vote that fielded 88 vigilante vote fraud hunters, including, and they had unlimited rights to challenge other voters. One woman you'll see in the film, Pam Reardon, this one GOP official, personally challenged over 32,000 people in one county of Atlanta, Cobb County. 32,000 people. She just sent an email with 32,000 names. And you'll see that I confront her in the film, but also another character in the film, one of the politicians very close to Republican Governor Brian Kemp. This guy challenged 4,000 voters, almost all of them, Black soldiers from Fort Benning, Georgia. And we have the good guys we have in the film, for example, is MAJ Gamaliel Turner. Okay, he's the military's expert on warfare of the future. Very fancy. And he was assigned, when the Ukraine war broke out, he was assigned to California, to Fort Hueneme. And this vigilante challenged 4,000 soldiers, including him. And he was going to lose his vote. But one thing you're allowed to do is they're mostly challenging like soldiers assigned to distant bases. They could be in Syria. You don't lose your vote because you're a soldier assigned to the front lines or another base. Even if you're a Black soldier, you don't lose your vote. But 4,000 soldiers lost their vote. And they said to Major Turner, all you have to do is show up. This is a couple days before the election. He says, all I have to do is show up. I'm 2,600 miles away. This is just a new form of Jim Crow. And so that's what we are trying to expose. So people are warned that they better be checking their registration. They better be loaded for bear, loaded to vote, with your ID, proof of your address, and then if some vigilante challenges your vote, don't just take a provisional ballot. You got to go through this whole process. But again, and the final thing is that the reason we made this film this year is that the vigilante vote challenges, you had 88 vigilante vote challengers in the last election. This time, they've signed up 40,000 vigilante vote hunters, and about 8,500 have already put in, are you ready for this? 851,000 challenges to voters in America. 851,000 voters have already been challenged, and very few even know that their vote is challenged. That's the evil thing about it. You get challenged by one of these characters, the state's supposed to send you the county's supposed to send you a postcard, but it looks like a piece of junk mail. I mean, you don't even take notice of it. So we want people to take notice of those postcards and save your vote. And that's why, by the way, you can download the film gratis starting September 13th, Friday. You can download the film gratis at saveyourvote.org. Saveyourvote.org. That's the end of my advertisement.
David, tell us how you want an approach on directing something like this and trying to balance it so it doesn't appear too partisan, and that you want to basically put out that message out there that, you know, that this is actually going on.
The first part of the question, sorry, got cut off.
How did you want to approach, you know, on directing this documentary?
The facts, the vote suppression in this issue, it is, as Greg said, a partisan issue, and we can't get away from that, where the perpetrators of this crime are Republican officials. Not that all Republicans are in Georgia are doing this, but what we do is we show the people, and we show the villains, and we show the victims, and we get to know them, and we get to learn about them. So it's not just a number of one of 4,000 people. You get to know who Major Turner is, and you get to see his background. One of the things that makes it so devastating for him, as you'll see in this film, is that as 70 years old, that he has his right to vote taken away, is that his family started the civil rights movement. It was born in his dining room table, where his father was the assistant to Pastor Ralph Abernathy, and Martin Luther King Jr. was their neighbor. And they would secretly convene when he was a boy at his dining room table, and they planned the demonstrations for the civil rights movement. So for decades later, for him to have his right to vote taken away was, bringing up generational trauma. Then in terms of the perpetrators, we also get to know them. And again, they're not, they get to speak for themselves. So we give them a chance to speak, and they, they have their story, and they stick to it, and they feel, they hang themselves. So it's not us, the camera runs and they run their mouths, and that's what's in the film.
Yeah, so it's kind of also has an undercover element to get into these people's homes, or get them in front of our cameras. And in the case, for example, in case of this woman Pam Reardon, it can get gnarly. Her house was right next to her door was an AR-15. She had ammo and guns all over the place. And when I got in, and when I showed her the pictures of her black neighbors whom she had challenged, did you contact them? Did you know these people? No. Then why she said, I can't contact 32,000 people. I said, yeah, but you could challenge 32,000 voters. And she went berserk on me. I kept saying, do you know the law of America, the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871? She says, I'm Canadian. It's like, it was ridiculous. But then she chased me out of the house, threw me out, and we had a confrontation at her door. I have to say, the local camera crew, and I can't blame them, fled when she started getting nasty. You know, they and I can't blame them. It was a dangerous situation, but we're used to it. And working with our co-producer, great undercover investigative photojournalist Zach Roberts, he has a steady hand. I mean, took some of the most famous pictures of the Charlottesville Tiki Torch riot, etc. You know, he's used to actually he will keep filming if there's a gun in his face. That's really happened. And so he was steady and stayed with it to film this. And that's really, you know, it's something you just don't see with US news guys.
That is so true. So if critics actually do, people who are critical of this film watches this, and they accuse you of gotcha journalism, how do you respond to that?
No, they got themselves, as David said. In other words, I go to Pam Reardon and I say, and I'm asking her, this woman who challenged 32,000 people, mostly Black people and young people, you know, did you do anything to check this name? She said, no, she just took it from this right-wing group that True the Vote, that created the film 2000 Mules, that was launched by Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And she said, you know, I can't check 32,000 names. I'm not, you know, I'm giving her a chance to say, well, yes, we did some very, very careful work in vetting. And I checked out these addresses and I called people and said, do you live here or where do you live? And no, I mean, so I'm not telling her I didn't do anything. I just challenged these people because I was given a list by a Trump affiliated organization. So these people expose themselves. We don't expose them.
In the case of the other gentleman, Alton Russell, who took away Major Turner's right to vote, he wouldn't even apologize. He was sitting there right next to him in his own home. Clearly, he did not. He did live in Georgia if he was in his own home, as you'll see in the film, in a wonderful confrontation. And he wouldn't apologize. And he also had the power to undo it and to make sure it wouldn't happen again. And he wouldn't do that either. So.
Yes. So what we did was, for those who will see the film, and it's not giving away too much because there's plenty of jump scenes that we have, but we literally invited one of these vigilantes who dresses like a vigilante. He dresses like Doc Holliday with the loaded, I should emphasize, 6 guns in a holster. And we invited him to talk about Georgia and Doc Holliday into a home, and he did not realize it was the home of Major Turner, the home where he said Major Turner didn't live. And then the major came out of the kitchen and sat down and said, hey, this is my home. This is where I live. You know, and you stopped me from voting by saying I didn't live in my own home. And again, as David mentioned, this vigilante wouldn't apologize. I mean, he was pretty shaken up. We were always worried when people have loaded guns in these stories that, you know, it does get a little gnarly. It travels between dangerous and crazy and wildly humorous at the same time, because it's almost goofy. I mean, as long as no one got shot, you know, it's actually frankly, it's very entertaining, and that's important too. I didn't want to make a good for you PBS story, you know, white guys in front of bookcases documentary, even though right now I'm a white guy in front of a bookcase. But we wanted to make it so that you would go into the homes and lives of people on both sides of this story.
Well said. Well said. Now, a lot of this film is concentrated on Georgia and Brian Kemp. Was it because of the you guys wanted to because due to resources you just want to concentrate on mainly this state, or is Georgia ground zero that's starting to spread all over the nation?
Yes, that's very important. Mark Elias, who's one of the top voting rights experts in America, a lawyer, said that that this vigilante challenges are a virus. He calls it a virus out of Georgia. And we asked the head of the NAACP, the president, who's on camera, Gerald Griggs, why is it always Georgia? And he said, this Deep South, this is the kind of, Georgia is always the testing ground for vote suppression techniques. And because it's the state where the racial balance is roughly 50-50. And so the only way that the GOP can keep control of the state, and they've lost it in the last election, remember, they lost two. You have two Democratic senators. Joe Biden won by famously 11,779 votes. And so it's always the test ground. Mark Elias calls Georgia patient zero. Whenever there's a viral vote suppression technique, they first try it out in Georgia, see how it works, and then they roll it across the nation. This happens with voter purging by the state, and we're not talking small stuff. Brian Kemp, the Republican governor, purged 500,000 voters from the voter rolls, and you get to meet one. 92-year-old Christine Jordan, Martin Luther King's cousin, whom he knocked off the voter rolls, saying this woman had lived in Atlanta for 92 years, no longer lived in Atlanta. And I went to the house that the governor said that she didn't live in. And there was a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall at that house 50 years earlier. So this is the type of game. But again, this type of stuff is generally test driven out of Georgia. And that's why we concentrate on Georgia. And also it gives us a chance to go into the history of where this comes from. We have a whole section on how Brian Kemp, the current governor, his family was the first family in the South, in the Georgia territory, which included all the Deep South, the first family to bring Africans in chains into the American South. And so we have to tell that story too. And that's important because you can't understand vote suppression today unless you understand human suppression, human trafficking, and brutality from years before.
Well said. Well said. Of course, some people will actually watch this and you guys pull no punches because I understand Jim Crow laws, voter suppression, and even the Ku Klux Klan is actually mentioned here. But why didn't you want to pull punches to try to link, by linking, these vote hunters to the Ku Klux Klan as if the modern day vigilantes is vigilante like a new code for the KKK, or is it just completely something else?
No, the Vigilantes Inc. was literally the Ku Klux Klan in 1940, before the 1946 election. Ku Klux Klan incorporated itself, calling itself Vigilantes Inc., which is the name of our film, and which we took deliberately because these are the new vigilantes, and they call themselves vigilantes. They're very proud of them. You have to understand, they're very proud of themselves. They're vote fraud hunters. And even though none of them check out the facts, they challenge people without having any idea, except that they are Black or young or Hispanic or Asian. And in other words, voters of color, and the color is blue. That's why they're going after these voters.
So true, so true. Well, look, I've taken both of you a lot of time already, so I'm going to wrap it up with one last question. People are going to have a chance to watch Vigilante Inc. here, Vigilantes Inc. What is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after watching this film?
Dave?
There has been the right to vote in America has always been a battleground, and it is more of a battleground now than ever. This will be our third presidential election without the protection of Martin Luther King Jr.'s Voting Rights Act. And they're going to have to, in states where these vigilante laws are active, they're going to have to fight again, as people did in the 60s. And it is a call to action. And we need that movement. We need that energy, that same passion as the people who got the Voting Rights Act passed to do it again.
Well said. Greg, you want last word?
Yeah, I mean, the film is a warning. It's entertaining, but it's also a warning. And the point is that we want people to be prepared. And as David said, we have to have a new voting rights movement. We're beginning to slide backwards with all this voting trickery, and also the big lie that Black people are voting multiple times, that Black people are voting from out of state. So we are busting the big lie myth. And the big lie, when we say that, when Trump says he won, back 4 years ago. He's basically saying black people stole the election from me. That's what they are. That's the whole point of the film 2000 Mules. And we're the anti 2000 Mules. We're the response to 2000 Mules. And again, our purpose isn't partisan. Vote for whom you want. But I think that voters, not vigilantes, should pick our president.
Well said. Well said. I can't wait until what you guys do after the election. There's probably going to be plenty of stories to tell. So looking
We'll be
forward,
ready.
guys, what your next project, and crossing my fingers you guys don't get shot.
Thank you. Appreciate that a whole lot. There's my fingers too. Thank you.